She was still in her scrubs when he opened his eyes. She hadn't meant to be there. She had other patients. She had a chart she needed to update. She had a cup of coffee going cold at the nurse's station that she had been promising herself for 40 minutes. But the post-op bay had been short-staffed since Tuesday, and the man in bed 7 had been under for 6 hours. And when the monitors changed their tone, she had been the closest person, and she had come. She was checking his IV line when he came back. Not gradually. Not the slow surfacing of most post-anesthesia patients. The flinching and the confusion and the asking of the same question 4 times. He came back the way certain people came back from things, which was all at once, with the eyes open and the assessment running before the rest of him had finished arriving. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at the monitor. He looked at the IV line, and then at her hand on the IV line, and then at her face. She had been looked at by a lot of patients in 7 years of nursing. She had been looked at in confusion and fear and gratitude and the particular desperate hopefulness of people who had been very sick and had just been given more time. She had not been looked at quite like this, with the quality of a man doing triage, sorting information, locating himself in the world through a series of rapid and efficient assessments. "Where?" he said. His voice had the roughness of the intubation tube. "Post-operative recovery," she said. "Sole General. You're going to feel the incision when the anesthesia clears. Don't try to sit up yet." He looked at her. "Your name," he said. "Amara," she said. "I'm your nurse. You're going to be fine." He was quiet for a moment. He was looking at her with the assessment quality, still running it, still sorting. She had seen patients do this, the reorientation, but his had a different character. It was not "where am I?" It was "who is this person, and what do I need to know about them?" "How long?" he said. 6 hours in surgery," she said. "You're in recovery now. You've been stable for about 40 minutes. He looked at his hand, at the IV, at the monitor. "The donor," he said. Something moved through her, not surprise, exactly, but a quality of stillness that her body produced when a moment required it. She kept her face professional. She kept her hand steady on the IV. "The transplant was successful," she said. "The kidney is functioning. You're going to be fine." He looked at her, not at the IV, not at the monitor, at her. "Gamsahamnida," he said. The word for thank you in Korean, said with a weight that told her it was doing more work than the surface of it, that he was not thanking her for the nursing, that he knew already in the specific way that certain people knew things more than she had told him. She said, "Rest, we can talk later." She walked back to the nurse's station. She did not know yet that 2 of the men in the waiting room downstairs were his, and that they had been there since before surgery, and that when they heard the doctor's update they had placed 3 calls simultaneously, and that the 3 calls had set in motion a series of events that would reach her in approximately 72 hours. She had a cup of coffee to finish. She finished it. World Build Seoul General Hospital's transplant unit on the 8th floor was not a ward. It was a frontier, the specific border territory where the possible and the impossible negotiated their terms, where medicine did what medicine could do, and what it couldn't do announced itself in the quality of the waiting rooms, which held, always, people in the particular state of suspended reality that surrounded major surgery. The 8th floor had its own rhythms, its own atmosphere, its own moral weather. Amara had worked it for 3 of her 7 years and had come to understand it the way she understood the other things she understood well. Completely, without romance, with a clear-eyed appreciation for what it cost and what it gave. She was 31. She was from Enugu originally, the second of 4 children. the one who had told her mother at 8 that she was going to be a nurse and had been told by her mother, who had been a midwife for 30 years, then you had better be ready for what that means. She had been ready. She had gone to nursing school in Abuja and then to London for her specialist training in renal care and transplant support. And she had come to Seoul because Seoul General had a transplant program that was doing things that no program in West Africa was yet doing, and she had wanted to be inside what was being done. She had been here for 5 years. She sent money home every month. Her youngest brother was in university. Her mother's house needed a new roof that Amara had been building toward for 2 years and was now 4 months from being able to pay for. She lived in a flat in Mapo district that had good light in the mornings, and a market 2 blocks away, and a landlady who had, over 5 years, progressed from suspicious to tolerant, to something approaching maternal, which manifested in occasional containers of food left outside Amara's door. She was precise and warm and had no patience for incompetence, and had the specific kind of energy that transplant nursing required. The ability to hold the weight of what was at stake without being crushed by it. To be present with patients and families through the most extreme circumstances of their lives, and to go home at the end of a shift and sleep and come back. She had learned the last part the hard way in London in the first year, before her supervisor had sat her down and said, "You cannot pour from a vessel that is constantly being emptied. Replenish or leave. Those are the options." She had learned to replenish. She had not learned, and did not intend to learn, to stop caring. Caring was not the problem. Caring without replenishment was the problem. She had made the distinction precise, and maintained it with the same precision she brought to her medication protocols and her documentation, and the assessment of her patient's pain. The man in bed 7 had been admitted 6 weeks earlier. She had not been assigned to him initially. She had been on the renal failure support rotation, and he had come through the general admissions pathway, and their paths had intersected at week 3 when the unit rotations shifted, and she had picked up his case from a colleague who was going on leave. His name on the chart was Han Min Seo. His admitting diagnosis was end-stage renal failure secondary to a condition that had been managed badly for years, and had arrived at crisis in the way of things that are managed badly for years. He was 38. He was listed as self-employed, which the transplant coordinator had noted in the file with the neutral handwriting of someone who noted things without commenting on them. His emergency contacts were 3: a man named Park Chul, a man named Seo Dong-hyun, and a woman named Han So-young, listed as sister. He had been on the transplant list for 14 months. His blood type was AB-negative, the rarest type, the hardest match, the one that made the list a longer wait than almost any other. 14 months on the list for AB-negative in a country of 50 million was not unusual. It was the specific mathematics of scarcity applied to the body. She had read the chart. She had assessed the patient. She had done what she did, which was see the person inside the medical situation, not just the renal failure and the blood type and the 14 months, but the man, contained, watchful, receiving her care with the particular quality of someone who was not accustomed to being cared for and was uncertain what to do with it. Unfailingly courteous, in the formal register that Korean politeness deployed in hospitals, which was different from the informal register, but no less genuine. She had given him her best nursing. She had also, and she had not told anyone this, had barely examined it in herself, had let it live in the place where things lived that she wasn't ready to examine. Spent one evening on her own time, 3 weeks into his case, looking at the living donor registry. She was AB-negative. This was a fact she had known about herself for years in the abstract way that people know their blood type, as a piece of identifying information, occasionally relevant, mostly filed. She had known it in the more specific way since nursing school, where the renal unit placement had taught her what AB-negative meant in the context of organ transplantation, which was universal recipient, rarest donor. AB-negative donors could give to anyone. AB-negative recipients could only receive from AB-negative donors. She had looked at the registry. She had looked at the matching criteria. She had looked at Han Min Seo's chart. She had not made the decision that night. She had made it over 2 weeks, with the deliberateness she brought to decisions that involved something she could not take back. She had consulted her own physician. She had read every study on living donor outcomes she could find. She had sat with the weight of it the way she sat with difficult things, completely, without rushing the conclusion, giving it the time it needed to become clear. It had become clear. She had registered as a living donor candidate. She had been evaluated. She had been matched. She had told the transplant coordinator. She had not told Han Min Seo. He had found out, as patients found out about these things, from the transplant team, not from her. She had been on shift when the coordinator went in to tell him. She had not been in the room. She had been at the nurse's station, doing her documentation, and she had heard, through the specific carrying quality of a room that went suddenly and completely silent. The moment he found out, she had not gone in. She had finished her documentation. The surgery had been scheduled for the following week. The time bomb was already detonating. She did not know yet, in the post-op bay, watching him assess the ceiling and the monitor and her face, that the 3 simultaneous calls from the men in the waiting room had reached people who would, by morning, know everything about her that could be known. She thought she was a nurse who had given a kidney to a patient. She would find out, a nurse who had given a kidney to Baek Han Min Seo, whom Seoul knew as Han Min Seo, and whom a much smaller number of people in Seoul knew as something else entirely. And those people were at this moment making calls. CTA Bridge My Brave Hearts and Open-Handed People, 60 seconds before we go any further. If this story found you tonight, and you already know that the most dangerous kind of generosity is the kind you give without calculating the return, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a like. Drop your city in the comments right now. Enugu, Seoul, London, Lagos, Atlanta, Accra, wherever you're watching from, leave it. Every comment tells the algorithm this story deserves to be found by the person who needs to hear it. A woman gave a stranger her kidney. He woke up as the Mafia boss. She doesn't know yet what she's walked into. Let's find out. The heroine's wound, she had done it because of Joseph. This was not something she said out loud. It was not something she had written in any of the forms the transplant evaluation required, where the question of motivation was asked, and she had answered it with the true but incomplete answer. I am a compatible donor. I am a nurse in the relevant specialty. I am in good health, and I believe in the value of living donation. All of that was true. None of it was the whole. Joseph was her older brother, the first of 4. The one who had, when Amara was 7 and he was 11, donated his own blood for her during a transfusion complication in Enugu that the hospital had not been equipped to handle, and that her mother had managed to handle by being the specific kind of woman who managed things by refusing to accept that they were unmanageable. Joseph had given his blood without hesitation, in the uncomplicated way of an 11-year-old who understood that his sister needed something he had, and the giving was therefore obvious. Joseph had died at 23. A road accident outside Abuja, a Tuesday in March. He had been on his way to a job interview that he had prepared for weeks. She had been in her first year of nursing school. She had carried it the way she carried things, present incorporated, never dissolved. Joseph was in her nursing, in the specific quality of her presence with patients, in the thing her supervisor in London had named as the quality that made her exceptional in her field, and that Amara had never been able to fully describe. The supervisor had called it moral urgency, the sense, present in her work at all times, that the person in front of her mattered in a way that was not theoretical. She gave the best of herself to every patient. She had given more than that, once, to the man in bed 7. She had not been reckless. She had been precise, as she was always precise. The evaluation had been thorough. The risks were understood. The surgery was performed by the best team in Seoul General's transplant program. Her recovery had been monitored with the attention that medical colleagues gave to one of their own who was also a patient. She was, 11 days post-surgery, at the nurse's station, back on reduced hours, feeling precisely as her own physician had told her she would feel. Tired in a specific way. Healing in a specific way. With the specific deep satisfaction of someone who had done the irreversible right thing and was living in the aftermath of it. She had not thought carefully enough about one part of the aftermath. She had thought about the physical recovery. She had thought about the return to work. She had thought about her brother in university and the roof in Anugus, and the patients she would go back to caring for when her hours were restored to full. She had not thought carefully enough about what happened when the man in bed 7 recovered enough to do something about what he now knew. He knew her name. He knew her blood type. He knew she was AB negative and that she had been working his case for 3 weeks before she registered as a living donor candidate, and that the timing was not coincidental. She found out, on the 4th post-operative day, that he knew these things. She found out because Seo Dong-hyun, the second name on the emergency contact list, a man she had seen in the waiting room but not spoken to, compact and watchful in the specific way of men who were paid to be watchful, appeared at the nurse's station and said, in Korean, that Mr. Han was asking for Nurse Amara. She said he should be resting. SEO said, he's aware of that. She said, tell him I'll be in when my rounds are complete. SEO said, he thought you might say that. He said to tell you he would wait. She looked at Seo for a moment. Tell him 20 minutes, she said. It was 15. The hero's wound. She found out in pieces. Not that day. That day he was still 4 days post-operative, and the conversation had been short and professional, and she had not let it be anything else. He had thanked her. She had said she had done what anyone in her position with her blood type would have done. He had looked at her with the quality she recognized from the post-op bay, the triage look, the rapid assessment, and said, no, they wouldn't. She had said, rest, and left. The pieces came across the weeks of his recovery, which she was still managing as his primary nurse, because removing herself from his case would have required an explanation she wasn't prepared to give, and because he was, medically, doing well and needed the continuity. She found out his actual name in week 2 from the transplant coordinator, who mentioned it in the context of a billing clarification. Casually, the way people mention things they assumed she already knew. The name was not Han Min Seo. The name was Baek Han Min Seo. She had been right that the transplant coordinator's notation of self-employed had been noted rather than commented on. The coordinator had, apparently, concluded that Amara already knew who she had donated to and had not felt the need to specify. She had not already known. She researched the name in the same methodical way she researched things. Thoroughly, without rushing, building the picture from its edges inward. She found what Seoul knew, and then she found what a smaller number of people knew. and then she sat with the picture for a full evening before she decided what she thought about it. What she thought was this: the kidney was already in him. It was functioning. Her decision had been made with complete information about what she was doing medically and incomplete information about who she was doing it for. The medical decision had been correct. The information gap did not make it incorrect retroactively. She had done what she had done. She went back to work on Tuesday. She learned the rest from him. Not in a single conversation, but in the accumulation of the conversations that happened across the 6 weeks of his inpatient recovery. First brief and professional, then longer, then the ones that were neither brief nor professional, but something she did not have a category for. He had grown up, he told her on a Wednesday in week 3, in the specific way of people who grew up in the Bayek family, which was to say, knowing what the family was before knowing that other families were different. His father had built the organization before Bayek Hanminseo was born. The world he entered at birth was already structured around the thing, and the thing was the context of everything: who came to the house, how people spoke to his father, the quality of the deference in every room. His mother had died when he was 6. This was the wound underneath, the one that lived at the origin of everything else, that the organization had grown over the way living things grow over. She had been the warmth in the house. She had been the person who knew his name the way names were supposed to be known, with full attention, with tenderness, with the weight of someone who understood that the person wearing the name was irreplaceable. When she died, the house had continued. It had been managed and maintained, and the machinery of it had run on. But the warmth had not been replaced. He had built the organization as his father had built it, with precision, with structure, with cold and capable intelligence. He had been good at it. He had been very good at it. He had also been, by the time the renal failure arrived, which had been building for 3 years, the consequence of a condition unmanaged, because unmanageable people were not built to manage their own bodies well, profoundly, specifically, alone. Not lonely. He did not use that word, and she had learned to read the distinction he made. Alone was a condition. Lonely was a complaint about the condition. He had never complained about it. He had simply been in it, the way he had been in everything, completely, without requiring it to be different from what it was. Until it had tried to kill him. The failure, he said, on a Thursday in week 4, was the first thing in years that made me consider that the structure was inadequate. He was looking at the window. He had started, across the weeks, to look at the window more than at the ceiling. She noted these progressions. They were part of what she tracked. The quality of a patient's relationship with their surroundings as an indicator of their recovery. You build something very complete, he said, and then you discover there is a category of failure that the completeness doesn't address. The body, she said. Yes, he said. The body. She noted the observation as she noted everything he said, in the place where she kept things that she was not ready to examine but did not want to lose. Forced proximity. Rung 1, he was discharged on a Thursday in week 7. She was working the morning shift. She had known the discharge was coming. She had been part of the discharge planning, had prepared the home care instructions, had coordinated with the outpatient transplant team for his follow-up schedule. She had done all of this with the professional thoroughness she brought to every discharge, and had, in doing so, not examined what it meant that the thoroughness felt different. He was dressed when she arrived for morning rounds, not in the hospital-issued clothing, in his own clothes, which had been brought by Seo Dong-hyun, which told her the discharge had been planned in advance of the official notification. He was sitting on the edge of the bed with the particular uprightness of a man reclaiming his own posture after 7 weeks of hospital furniture. "Your discharge instructions," she said, and gave him the folder. He took it. He looked at it. He looked at her. I've arranged follow-up with the outpatient team, she said. Doctor, Kim will see you in 2 weeks. The medication schedule is on page 3. If you have any, Amara, he said. She stopped. He said her name the way he had said it since the post-op bay, with the weight of someone who understood what they were saying when they said it. Her name, in his mouth, had from the first moment had a quality that she had noted and filed and not examined. I know what you did, he said. Not in the medical sense. I know the medical sense. He held her gaze. I mean, I know what it cost. I know what the evaluation requires, what the surgery requires, what the recovery requires. I've had my people find every piece of information about living donation that exists. He paused. I know what you gave. She held her folder. She stood straight. She said, I hope you use it well. I intend to, he said. I also intend. He stopped. There is no equivalent return. I know that. There isn't, she said. That's not why I did it. I know, he said. That's also something I know. He held her gaze with the directness she had watched him deploy across 7 weeks. Not aggressive, not performative. The particular directness of someone who had decided that precision was the only honest approach. I would like to see you. After this, not as my nurse. As Mr. Baik, she said. Han, he said. Please, she looked at him. Give me time, she said, to think about what that means. He was quiet for a moment. How much time, he said. I'll tell you when I know, she said. That's the only answer I can give you that's honest. He looked at her for a long moment. Honest is what I need, he said. Take the time. She walked him to the elevator. She pressed the button. She stood beside him while they waited, in the particular quality of hospital elevator waiting that has its own atmosphere. The ordinary mechanics of departure, the thing that comes after the extraordinary event. The elevator arrived. He stepped in. He turned and looked at her one more time, the triage look, the assessment, but softer than it had been in the post-op bay. The assessment was of a different kind. The information being sorted was not about where he was or who she was. It was about what this was, and what it was going to be, and what the correct next step was. I'll wait, he said. As long as it takes. The elevator closed. She stood at the door for a moment. Then she walked back to her patients. Rung 2, she took 3 weeks. Not because she needed 3 weeks to decide. She had, if she was honest with herself, which she always tried to be. Decided in the elevator hallway. But because the decision was large enough that she wanted to give it the weight it deserved. She had given this man her kidney. She was not going to give him anything else without being certain. She was also, in the 3 weeks, processing something that she had not anticipated and which her years of nursing had not prepared her for. The specific experience of being cared for by a patient's people. It began with the groceries. They appeared outside her door on Saturday morning, not brought by Sio, whom she would have recognized, but left there, a box, from the market that was good and more expensive than the market 2 blocks away. The items inside were the specific items she had mentioned across 7 weeks of conversation, in the offhand way that people mention things when they're not tracking what they're saying. The brand of rice her mother sent her when she could. The specific pepper she had told him once that she used in the soup her landlady's containers couldn't replicate. He had been listening to every word. She had known he was listening. She had not known he was cataloging. She called the number he had given her on the day of discharge, slipped inside the discharge folder, which she had found when she got home, a card with nothing on it but the number. The groceries, she said when he answered. Too much, he said. It was not a question. Too much, she agreed. I'll adjust, he said. Don't adjust, she said. Stop, a pause. I owe you something I cannot pay back, he said. I have to do something with that. You don't, she said. That's not how it works. Then tell me how it works, he said, because I don't. A pause that was different from his other pauses. Not calculation. Something else. I don't have a framework for this. She thought about that. I didn't give you a kidney so you'd be in debt to me, she said. I gave it because you needed it, and I had one to give, and the risk to me was acceptable, and the benefit to you was not theoretical. She paused. That's a complete transaction. It doesn't produce an obligation. Amara, he said. Han, when I was in the hospital, he said, for 7 weeks, you were there every day. Not always as my nurse. Sometimes as the person who walked past the window at the end of the hall, and I could tell, from the way the ward sounded, that you had arrived. A pause. I have not had that. A person whose arrival changes the quality of the air. He was quiet. That is not a medical observation. She sat with this. I know, she said. Give me the 3 weeks, he said. I'll wait. She had already given him 2. She called him at the end of the 3rd week. Tuesday, she said. I'm off at 6. There's a place near Mapo I like. The food is not impressive, but the owner is very old and makes his own doenjang, and it's the best thing within walking distance of my flat. A pause. Tuesday, he said. 6:30. I said 6, she said. I walk slowly after long shifts. 6:15, he said. 6:15, she agreed. Rung 3. The competence reveal she had not told him about Joseph. She had not told anyone in Seoul about Joseph. It was not a secret. It was simply hers. One of the things she carried in the private interior that she did not open for professional contexts and had not yet opened for this one. He found out, not from her, on a Thursday. He found out because he did what she had already understood he would eventually do, which was read everything about her that could be read. She had assumed this was coming and had not decided whether to feel invaded by it. She had concluded, in the end, that a man of his specific training and information did not read people out of aggression, but out of the same instinct she brought to patient charts. The need to understand, to have the full picture, to not be operating on incomplete data. She had been operating on incomplete data about him. She had filled it in. It was not unreasonable that he would do the same. What she had not anticipated was that he would find Joseph. He mentioned it on their 4th dinner, not at the Mapo place. They had graduated from the Mapo place to other places, working their way through her neighborhood's geography of restaurants, the way they worked through most things, systematically, with her knowledge and his attention. Your brother, he said. Joseph? She looked at him. I'm sorry, he said, for the finding, and for the losing. She held her fork. Who told you? She said. No one told me, he said. I found the memorial scholarship. His name is attached to a nursing school bursary you established in Abuja. 2018, she looked at her plate. You were in your 1st year at King's, he said. You started the bursary 2 months after he died, from the settlement. A pause. I didn't. I wanted to understand why you did it. What I couldn't find anywhere was the answer to why someone does what you did. The evaluation forms ask the question and get the medical answer. I was looking for the other answer. She was quiet. You found it, she said. Yes, he said. She looked up. He gave blood. For me, she said. When I was 7, a complication, an Enugu, and Joseph was 11 years old and he gave his blood without. He didn't think about it. It was obvious to him. She turned her fork in her hand. He died 16 years later, and I was in my first year of nursing school, and I understood, in the specific way you understand things that cost everything, that I was going to spend the rest of my life doing what he had done, giving what I had to give, without calculating whether the return was worth it. She looked at the table. Because he taught me that you don't calculate the return. You look at what you have, and you look at what someone needs, and if you have it, you give it. Han was very still. He would have been 36, she said. Yes, Han said. In March. She looked at him. You found his birthday. The scholarship documentation lists it. He held her gaze. I would like, if it is something you would want, to contribute to it. In his name, not as a debt. Because what he taught you is the reason I am alive, and that seems like something worth acknowledging. She looked at him for a long time. I'll think about it, she said. That's what you say, he said, when the answer is yes, but you need to give yourself permission for it. She looked at him. That's a presumptuous observation, she said. It's an accurate one, he said. She looked at her food. Yes, she said. It's accurate. The external threat, it came on a Monday, which she would later think was fitting because Mondays in the transplant unit were the busiest day, and she was therefore at her least available, and the threat arrived in the form of a man she didn't know in the hospital lobby at the start of her shift, which was the kind of specific and intentional inconvenience that told her it was not accidental. The man was not large and not obviously threatening, and was wearing the kind of clothes that Seoul's business district produced in quantity. He stopped her at the lobby coffee station with the precision of someone who knew her schedule. Nurse Amara, he said. She looked at him. She registered. With the assessment capacity 7 years of nursing had built into her, several things simultaneously. His posture, the quality of his stillness, the two men behind him who were not looking at each other, but were aware of each other in the way of people trained to be aware of each other. I'm on shift, she said. This won't take long, he said. I represent certain parties with an interest in the Han organization. There is a concern that your relationship with Mr. Baek has created a situation that could affect certain arrangements. She looked at him. You'll need to be more specific, she said. The kidney, he said, was registered as an anonymous donation. The anonymity was administratively maintained. The fact that the primary nurse for the case was also the donor was irregular. She looked at him. My medical ethics documentation is complete and on file with Seoul General, the Transplant Board, and the Korea Organ Donation Agency. Is there a specific irregularity you'd like to identify? He was quiet for a moment. The relationship, he said, after the discharge. Your relationship with Mr. Baek is personal, she said. Post-discharge, no clinical relationship exists. She held his gaze. Is there something else? He looked at her with the quality of a man who had expected a different register. The parties I represent, he said, would prefer that the relationship be discontinued. She looked at him. She thought about Joseph at 11 giving blood without calculating the return. She thought about 7 years of transplant nursing and what it had built into her. She thought about a man in bed 7 assessing the ceiling before he had finished arriving back from the anesthesia. She said, tell the parties you represent that I've noted their preference. She picked up her coffee. She walked to the elevator. She called Han from the break room at noon. There was a man in the lobby this morning, she said. He represents parties with an interest in the organization. He asked me to discontinue our relationship. A pause. A specific kind. Are you all right? He said. I'm fine, she said. I'm telling you because you should know, and because I don't like people making decisions about my life in lobbies. A longer pause. Amara, he said. I didn't say I was stopping, she said. I said I was telling you. Chung, he said, not to her, to someone in the background, the specific tone of a man issuing an instruction that did not require volume to carry weight. Then, back to her. It's handled. Don't handle it in a way I'll need to not know about, she said. A beat. You're extraordinary, he said. I know, she said. I have a chart to update. I'll call you tonight. The declaration: he came to the hospital on a Saturday. Not as a patient. He was 11 weeks post-surgery, and his follow-up was with the outpatient team and going as well as it could go, which was the specific phrase the transplant team used when they meant better than expected. He came on a Saturday morning when she was working a half shift, with no appointment, and no Seo Dong-hyun, and none of the organizational architecture that usually accompanied him in places outside her neighborhood's restaurants. He came alone. He was waiting in the lobby when she came down for her break. She saw him and stopped, and looked at him standing in the hospital lobby. This man, who ran what he ran, who had the organization and the empire's complications, standing in the lobby of Seoul General at 10 a.m. on a Saturday, in ordinary clothes with his hands at his sides, and no one with him. She walked to him. You could have called, she said. I wanted to come, he said, to this building. I wanted to. He stopped. Looked at the lobby, at the elevators, at the ceiling of the place where he had spent 7 weeks and woken up from surgery. I wanted to come back to where it started, before I said what I need to say. She looked at him. What do you need to say? She said. He looked at her with the direct quality, the one that had been present since the post-op bay, and had deepened across the months since into something that had its own specific character, the character of a man who had decided that precision was the only honest approach, and was applying it to the most important thing. I have been, he said, in this position for 9 years. I have made decisions that were correct, and decisions that cost more than they should, and decisions I carry. He looked at his hands. I have not made a decision in 9 years that I did not understand the full architecture of before I made it. And now, she said. And now, he said, I am standing in the lobby of the hospital where a woman I had not yet met gave me something she cannot take back. And I am telling you that I do not fully understand the architecture of what this is, and I intend to proceed anyway. He looked at her. That is not something I do. It is possibly the first time I have done it. She looked at him. What is it that you're proceeding with? She said. You, he said. Simply, without elaboration. Trusting the sentence. Whatever you will allow, however it is configured. I am not in a position to ask for more than you offer, and I am aware of that, and I am not asking for more. He paused. I am telling you that what I feel, I don't have the vocabulary for it, which is also new. I have the vocabulary for most things, is the most honest thing I have in me, and I want you to have it. She stood in the hospital lobby. She thought about Joseph, about you don't calculate the return, about looking at what you have and what someone needs, and if you have it, giving it. She thought about what she had. What she had. She had been taking inventory of across 11 weeks and 4 dinners and 3 weeks of deliberation and a lobby conversation with a man who had been sent to discourage her. She had determined enough to give. Han, she said. Yes, he said. I am going to tell you something, she said, and then we're going to get coffee from the machine because the coffee on the 8th floor is the only thing in this building I have a complicated relationship with, and I need something to hold while I say it. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. The neighbor of one. She had seen it across 11 weeks, becoming more frequent, less reluctant, less surprised at itself. Get the coffee, he said. "I'll wait." She got the coffee. She came back and handed him one, and held hers in both hands the way she held things she needed to hold. "I am not easy," she said. "I am precise, and I am direct, and I have opinions about things, and I say them. I work long hours, and I take my patients seriously, and I send money home, and I have a brother's scholarship to maintain, and a roof to pay for in Enugu." She held his gaze. "I am not going to be a quiet addition to your life. I am going to be a specific and present and sometimes inconvenient addition." "Yes," he said. "And I am going to need you to be honest with me," she said. "About everything that affects me. Not the organization's business, that is not mine to know. But anything that reaches me, directly or indirectly, I need to hear from you before I hear it from a man in a lobby." "Yes?" he said. "You have my word." "Your word," she said. "Specifically my word," he said. Specifically, she looked at him. "Okay," she said. He looked at her. "Okay," he said. "Drink your coffee," she said. "It's not good, but it's hot, and you're 11 weeks post-surgery, and you should not skip warm things." He drank his coffee. The choice she told her mother on a Sunday. Not from the beginning. The beginning was too large. She would need a different call for the beginning. She told her what she could tell in a Sunday call. The man. The months. The restaurant in Mapo and the others after it. The lobby on a Saturday morning. Her mother listened with the quality that her mother brought to things she was paying full attention to. When Amara was done, her mother was quiet for a moment. "Tell me about him," her mother said. "He is precise," Amara said. "He does not say things he doesn't mean. He listens, completely, in the way that you feel listened to." He found Joseph. She paused. He found the scholarship, and he asked to contribute to it. Not as a debt. He understood the distinction. Her mother was quiet. He understood the distinction, her mother said. "Yes, between debt and recognition," her mother said. "Yes," her mother breathed. "Your brother," she said, "would have had questions, many questions. He had many questions about everything." "I know," Amara said. "But he would have liked the man who understood the distinction," her mother said. Joseph had a gift for recognizing people who gave without calculating. He would have recognized it in reverse. Amara held the phone. "Mummy," she said. "I know," her mother said. "I know." A pause. "Bring him to Enugu when it's time." "It's not." "I said when it's time," her mother said, with the specific patience of a woman who had been a midwife for 30 years and understood the difference between the thing arriving and the thing being ready. "I'll need to make enough food. He looks like a man who needs to eat properly." Amara laughed. For the first time in the conversation. The real laugh. The full one. "How do you know what he looks like?" she said. "You described him," her mother said. I listened. Resolution, his 3-month post-operative results were excellent. She was not his nurse for the outpatient follow-up. She had arranged, at his discharge, for the outpatient continuity to transfer to a colleague. And the colleague was excellent, and the results reflected excellent care and an excellent patient who was, she knew from the restaurant conversations, doing precisely what he had been told to do. "The numbers," he said, on the Thursday after the 3-month appointment, across the table of the place in Yongsan she had found in the 2nd month of restaurants. The one with the proper galbatang, and the owner who gave them the corner table without being asked now. "I know the numbers," she said. "Doctor, Kim sent me the summary." "Professional courtesy, is that allowed?" he said. "Technically no," she said. She did it anyway. "We were in the same cohort at nursing school." He looked at her. "You have people everywhere," he said. "I've been here 5 years," she said. "I pay attention to people. People remember being paid attention to." He was looking at her with the quality that had become, across the months, the one she knew best, not the triage look. Not the organizational quality, but the third thing, the one that was simply him looking at her the way he looked at things he had decided were worth the full weight of his attention. "The roof," he said. She looked at him. "In Enugu," he said. "You said 4 months. When we met, you were 4 months from being able to pay for it." 4 months was 11 months ago, she said. "I know," he said. "Is it done?" She had not told him. She had not told him because it was not his business, and because the roof had been completed in March, and it had been completed with her money, her savings, her 7 years of nursing, and she had stood in the courtyard of her mother's house on a Sunday in March in Enugu and looked at the new roof in the afternoon light and thought about the 12-year-old girl who had sat on a step stool in the kitchen while a midwife mother worked double shifts and had told herself she would fix the roof when she could fix the roof, and she had been able, and she had fixed it. She had not told him because it was hers. "Yes," she said. "In March." He was quiet. "I would like to see it," he said. "When it's time, my mother would like to meet you," she said. "She said she'll need to make enough food." Something moved through his face. Not the not-quite smile. Something larger. She had not seen this before, the full version. The one that had been being approached across the months in smaller and smaller increments, and had apparently arrived without announcement. "Your mother," he said, "is a woman I will be very careful not to disappoint." "She's not frightening," Amara said. "She raised you," he said. "She is the most frightening person I have not yet met." She looked at him across the galbatang, in the corner table the owner gave them without being asked, in the 3rd month of restaurants that had worked their way from Mapo across the district. "You're going to be fine," she said. "I know," he said. "You're a good nurse." "I'm retired as your nurse," she said. "I know," he said. "That's not what I meant." She looked at him. "I know," she said. Emotional close, she had given a stranger her kidney. Not impulsively. She had never been impulsive. She was precise and deliberate, and the decision had taken 2 weeks of complete and honest examination before it became certain. But without knowing, at the moment of certainty, who was on the other side of it. Without calculating, in the way that Joseph had not calculated at 11, whether the return was worth it. She had given it because she had it, and he needed it, and the giving was therefore obvious. He had woken up. He had looked at the ceiling and the monitor and her face, and he had been in triage, sorting the information, locating himself in the world. And the first thing he had asked for, before he had asked where he was or how long or who was beside him, was the donor. He had known, not the name, not the face, but that there was someone, specific and present, who had given something that could not be taken back, and that this was the first fact that required acknowledgement. He had said Gamsa Hamnida with the weight of a word doing more than its surface. She had said, "Rest. We can talk later." They had talked, as it turned out, for most of the following year. In post-op bays and hospital hallways, and a restaurant in Mapo and the restaurants after it, and a Saturday lobby and a phone call about a man sent to discourage her. They had talked in the specific way of 2 people who had both learned, through different routes and different losses, that precise and honest communication was not a courtesy, but a necessity. He had given her something back that was not equivalent. There was no equivalent, but was real. He had looked at everything she was and named it. He had found Joseph and understood what Joseph meant. He had stood in a hospital lobby on a Saturday morning with no one beside him and said, "I intend to proceed anyway. I have not done this before. I am doing it. She had given him a kidney. He had given her the specific thing she had not known she was missing, which was not resources, not security, not the organizational power that came with being near him. It was the thing that Joseph had given at 11 and that she had spent her whole life giving, and had not, until now, received someone who looked at what she had and what she needed, and gave, without calculating. He had calculated everything in his life. He had told her that. He had not made a decision in 9 years without understanding its full architecture. He had proceeded without understanding the architecture. For her, some gifts cannot be repaid. Some people understand that the point was never repayment. End CTA, my brave hearts and open-handed people. If this story held you all the way through, you already know that the most powerful thing in any room is not the person everyone bows to. It's the person who gives without calculating. Drop your city in the comments right now. Enugu, Seoul, London, Lagos, Accra, Atlanta, wherever you are, leave it. Leave a like so the algorithm knows this story deserves to find the person who needs it. Subscribe and ring that bell, because what comes next features a woman who sat across from the most powerful negotiators in the room and said the one thing that none of them had thought to say, and it changed the outcome for everyone. I'll see you there. Give what you have. Don't calculate the return.